Imagine sitting in a courtroom where everyone thought they already knew the truth. The charges were straightforward, the story seemed predictable, and the defendant carried himself like a man who still believed he controlled the room. But then the prosecutor held up a folder. Inside were pages of private emails that no one had ever seen before. The judge leaned forward, the defense froze, and the entire courtroom went silent. And when those emails were finally read aloud, exposing words so vile, so hateful, that even the jurors recoiled, the trial stopped cold. That moment didn't just change the outcome of one man's fate. It changed the way an entire community looked at power, prejudice, and the illusion of control. Before we go further, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Uncovered. We bring you the cases others bury, the truths others fear, and the stories that shake entire communities. Hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear will keep you glued until the very last word. Willow Bend was the kind of neighborhood real estate brochures loved to advertise. Freshly cut lawns, clean sidewalks, and a community association that promised peace and order. But underneath the postcard-perfect streets ran a tension most outsiders never saw. A tension created, nurtured, and weaponized by one man, Richard Halden. Richard wasn't just the president of the Willow Bend Homeowners Association. He was its self-appointed sheriff, judge, and executioner. A man in his late 50s, with thinning silver hair slicked back and a frame that still carried the weight of his younger years as a college athlete. He spoke with authority, moved with arrogance, and reminded everyone, constantly, that his word was the law of the neighborhood. If your grass grew too long, Richard sent warnings. If your trash bins lingered a day too late, fines appeared in your mailbox. Holiday lights still hanging in January? A written citation, hand-delivered with a smirk. But for some homeowners it went beyond nitpicking rules. For them, Richard's behavior turned personal. That's what Marcus Green knew better than anyone. Marcus was a man in his mid-40s, tall, broad-shouldered, with the quiet discipline of someone who had seen more of life than most of his neighbors could imagine. A decorated military veteran, now working as a logistics consultant, Marcus moved to Willow Bend for the same reasons as everyone else. Peace, safety, a place to raise his teenage daughter. He kept to himself, polite when greeted, reserved when pushed. But from the first month he moved in, Richard made it clear he didn't belong. At least, not in Richard's version of Willow Bend. Started small. A note on Marcus's door claiming his car was parked improperly. A warning about excessive noise when Marcus hosted a family barbecue. Even accusations of unauthorized modifications for painting his shutters a slightly different shade of gray. Marcus ignored most of it, chalking it up to the kind of HOA nonsense everyone joked about. But Richard wasn't joking. He escalated. He told neighbors that Marcus wasn't a good fit for the community. He muttered about property values whenever Marcus walked by. He warned others that Marcus was trouble waiting to happen. And then came the breaking point. On a warm June afternoon, Marcus came home from work to find Richard standing in his driveway with two men in dark vests. The words community enforcement were stitched across their chests, patches designed to mimic law enforcement. One of the men was stocky with a grizzled beard, the other lanky and twitching with nerves. Richard's face was red with determination as he pointed at Marcus's car. "You've racked up multiple violations," he barked. "Noise complaints, unsanctioned modifications, improper parking. These men are here to enforce HOA authority. You need to come with us." Neighbors stepped out, curious, phones already recording. Marcus stood silently, hand resting on the hood of his SUV, his expression unreadable. "You're not law enforcement," Marcus said calmly. "And neither are they. You've got 10 seconds to leave my property." The burly enforcer puffed his chest. "We are authority here. You don't get to say no." In a flash, Marcus moved. He grabbed the lanky one's wrist, twisted, and pinned him against the SUV with surgical precision. The man cried out, knees buckling, while Marcus spoke with chilling control. "Stop resisting. You'll dislocate your shoulder if you fight me." The crowd gasped. Phones shook as they recorded. Richard screamed, That's assault. You're under arrest. But before the scene could spiral further, sirens pierced the suburban air. Sheriff's deputies rolled down the block. When the officers stepped out, they saw chaos, 2 men in fake tactical gear, an HOA president shouting orders, and a calm black homeowner restraining one of the imposters. Deputy Alvarez raised his hand. Everyone stop. Hands where we can see them. Marcus released the man, stepped back, and raised his hands casually. Richard rushed forward, pointing and spitting accusations. Arrest him. He attacked my enforcement officers while they were executing HOA authority. The deputies looked at the vests, then back at Richard. Sir, these aren't law enforcement uniforms. Who are these men? They're with the Willow Bend Community Enforcement Division. Richard snapped. That's not a thing, one deputy muttered. When Alvarez turned to Marcus for his side, Marcus moved slowly, pulled out a leather case, and flipped it open. Inside was a gold badge, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The crowd exploded in whispers, phones zooming in. Special Agent Marcus Green, he said evenly. Counterintelligence Division. These men attempted to impersonate law enforcement on my property. That's a federal crime. The deputy's posture shifted instantly. The fake enforcers were cuffed within minutes. Richard, too. His protests, "He's dangerous. He's not what he seems," fell flat against the sight of his wrists locked in steel. The footage hit social media the same night. Headlines blared the next morning. HOA president arrested after fake police stunt goes wrong. Man confronted in driveway turns out to be FBI agent. Neighborhood showdown ends in federal charges. Richard was booked. His enforcers faced federal charges. But the story wasn't finished. It was only beginning. 6 months later, the Tarrant County Courthouse was packed. Neighbors filled benches. Reporters lined the walls. Richard walked in wearing a suit too tight across his gut. His silver hair combed like armor. He still carried himself like he was in charge. The prosecution laid it out clearly. Richard had hired 2 men to impersonate officers. He had ordered them to detain Marcus under the guise of HOA authority. He had weaponized prejudice and power to target a man who had done nothing wrong. The defense painted Richard as misunderstood, a community leader who went too far, but had good intentions. But the jury wasn't convinced. Not yet. And then came the moment that shattered everything. The prosecutor held up a stack of papers. Your Honor, these are emails obtained through subpoena from Mr. Halden's personal account. The defense objected. The judge leaned forward. Overruled. Proceed. The prosecutor began to read. Email after email revealed Richard's private thoughts. Messages where he called Marcus a thug in disguise. Notes to other board members warning about people lowering the standard of our community. Even racist slurs typed out in black and white. Words so venomous, so undeniable, that the courtroom shifted. Gasps echoed. Jurors glanced at each other, disgust on their faces. Neighbors muttered. The judge slammed his gavel for silence. Richard sat frozen, his face drained of color. His attorney buried his head in his hands. Mr. Halden, the judge finally said, this court will not tolerate language, behavior, or actions rooted in prejudice disguised as authority. This trial is no longer about HOA disputes. It is about abuse of power and the attempted weaponization of hate. The defense collapsed. The verdict was a formality. Richard was found guilty on all counts. Conspiracy, impersonation, attempted unlawful detention, and hate-motivated harassment. He faced more than a decade behind bars. When the gavel fell, neighbors exhaled. The HOA was dissolved. A new board formed. Willow Bend felt lighter, freer, like chains had been cut. And Marcus? He walked out of the courthouse quietly, as he always did. He didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate. He simply nodded at the neighbors who now looked at him with respect instead of suspicion. For Marcus, it was just another battle won. But for Willow Bend, it was a story they would tell for decades. The day a racist HOA president tried to play police and was undone by his own words. And the moral? Power built on hate always crumbles under truth. It may take time. It may take courage. But eventually the mask slips, the words leak, and the world sees people for who they really are. That courtroom didn't just expose Richard Halden. It reminded everyone that silence allows prejudice to grow, but exposure destroys it. If you believe stories like this need to be told, don't just watch, subscribe. Because every click, every share, every subscriber helps us bring you the cases that others want forgotten. True crime uncovered doesn't hide the ugly. We shine a light on it. Subscribe today and never miss the truth.